Hello, this is Edith Newmeyer, and I'm the author of the book, The Mystery of Adam. I will finally get to discussing feminism today. And I just recently participated in a conversation or discussion on Facebook um, discussing if there is a place for feminism in the church. And the article really mentioned um, a list of all the extreme feminism. Okay, feminists. Like, for instance, the Marxist feminists, the radical feminists, the militant feminists, and so on. So, for me, they're called the extreme feminists. They are the ones that believe feminism is supposed to be defended no matter what. Many times these feminists actually hate men and don't mind hurting men, okay, to get their agenda met. I am a person that simply believes in feminism. And I want to read the definition, of course, right now, what feminism is. Okay, uh, the feminism is the advocacy of women's rights on the basis of the equality of the sexes. Okay, that's what feminism is. Again, the advocacy of women's rights on the basis of the equality of the sexes. Okay, you know that I am very, very, very strong on equality. And within that context of equality of the sexes, both sexes are equal, and both the rights of both sexes need to be supported and defended. So, looking at that, not at the extremes, okay, the extremes that are trying to destroy men, discredit men, hate men, and say we can do without men. Um, um, I am not on that side. That side definitely does not have any room in the church because that does not overlap with what we believe in the church. Feminism, as just what it is a good thing, and it needs to be actually supported in the church, but not to the detriment of masculinity. Okay, masculinity is just as important, should be just as valued, just as protected. The rights of men need to be just as protected in the church, because I know nowadays, because of these really radical feminists, um, really we have a lot of men being treated unfairly. When you look at, for instance, the divorce um, um, cases, many cases, um, the men are actually the one that are treated unfairly. Okay, many cases. So I am not talking about that. I do not talk about, when I talk about feminism, I'm not talking about a feminism that hurts men. I'm talking about a feminism that equals both both gender, not just one. And so in that regard, feminism has its place in the church because we celebrate femininity, we celebrate the success, the gifts, and the gifts of women. Now, I always, in my book, I come to the conclusion that Jesus was a really feminist. Okay, he was a feminist. He was stepping in for the rights of women in a culture which was absolutely male dominated, and in a culture where women were treated most of the time or many times as property. Okay, but he stood up for them. And it was also a culture where women were treated very unfairly. They didn't have equal rights, even though the law of Moses gave women equal rights. Okay, the culture uh, was so bad and so away from God that they followed the cultures around them regarding to women and demoted women very much. They were not interested in the equal rights of women. We saw that very clearly when Jesus discussed the divorce uh, the divorce procedures, um, and because during Jesus's time there were two courts of law. One court of law, and I keep forgetting the names of those courts of laws. They're based on some rabbis, and so one court of law uh, was very, very demeaning with women. And when it came to divorce, a man had to only give the wife actually no divorce paper, but all he had to do is send her away. If she was not pleasing to him, she would just be sent away by him. And if she got married, guess what? She could have been seen as an adulterous woman because she had no certificate of divorce. The other court system was not as lenient with men. So a divorce could not be given for any just any reason, but there had to be a real reason. Now Jesus came in and he said, no, it doesn't matter if there's a reason or not. You need to give the wife you're sending away a divorce decree, just like Moses said. You cannot just send her away without a divorce decree. So Jesus stood up all the time for women's rights. Okay? He had women follow him. He did not send them away. Okay? He had women study under him. I'm talking about Mary right now. Okay? And Mary sat at the foot of Jesus listening, which was very unusual because women would not join men in discussions, public discussions. And Jesus said, no, I am allowing women, to learn just as much as men. Okay, so he opened that door to women as well. Many other things, for instance, the first witnesses to his resurrection uh, were women. Um, Women were at the cross when he died. So he surrounded himself with lots of women, and the women loved him, of course. Why? Because he was fair with them. He respected them as equal partners. Just with, he may have chosen male apostles or disciples, okay? Or better apostles, because he chose women disciples as well. Women were following him and he did not send them away. But the apostles, the 12 apostles, were definitely men. Why? Simply because I think because of the culture. I mean, he went against the culture, but he knew also that the culture was not ready for the message that he was going to give, that women are equal partners in the church, because that's what he was saying. When after Jesus died and his followers met in the upper room, it was men and women equally, who were there praying. And the Holy Spirit, when the Holy Spirit came, both men and women equally received the Holy Spirit. We see in the New Testament many times, or mostly in the beginning, that uh, men took the lead. But again, that was a cultural thing. Uh, who would have listened to women? Um, they would have not had any credibility if, for instance, Martha would have stepped out there on the balcony after or during Pentecost and preach. Uh, I think the men would have just walked away or would have said, "Oh, this is heresy, and we can't listen." So it was necessary, that Jesus chose 12 apostles, male apostles. It was very important. It was important, again, because the culture wasn't ready. Neither were the male disciples ready. We see that over and over again. I mean, when we look at the example when Jesus met the Samaritan at the well, um, the disciples marveled. The male disciples, they were not, they didn't understand how he can even talk to a woman and a Samaritan at the same time. It wasn't just the Samaritan, it was also her being a woman. You don't speak to a woman in public. That's just not what you do. And Jesus broke with all these traditions. And he tried to show his disciples and his apostles that women are equal members in the church. And then when we go to Paul, we know Paul grew up exactly like that, in a male dominated world. And you think he could have understood that very, very, very well in the beginning? No, he didn't. But Jesus and the Holy Spirit taught him to accept women fully as full members in the church. We read some things, in the letters that make us think that he discriminated against women, but he didn't. Um, he had to grow in this faith. Okay, what was more important at the beginning? Well, that he was understanding that he is saved through faith. What's the next one? Well, he had to kind of establish the churches, so the Holy Spirit really had to work with him on this understanding what church is. And when we look at his understanding of the church, we see very clearly that women are an equal part um, in that church. Okay, and that is nothing but feminism. Okay, we respect females as well as males equally in the church. Period. That's just the way it is. Okay. Now, the little things he said about some of the things of the women, you know, they were all situation related things. And that's exactly the way we need to see them. Situation related. Okay. In general, women were not restricted from doing anything in the church. We are all restricted by not having authority over one another. Jesus established that. Okay, Jesus established that. Matter of fact, not just in one, but in two or even three of the Gospels, he established that we're not supposed to have authority over each other, and that includes men over women. No authority. Okay, so we don't even have to discuss that. That is something that shouldn't be even ever discussed. But then again, that still leaves the teaching part when one time, Paul said, one time, he said, women shouldn't teach. Now, was that again specific to a situation? Yes, it was, because we see that following that statement, he right away says women should learn in silence at home from their husband. Okay, so what does that tell me? Well, these women that are supposed to be learning in silence are not supposed to be teaching. Why? Well, because they're still learning. Okay, that applies to men too. You don't want a man to teach you if they are still a student. Okay, I'm a teacher. I am a teacher by profession, and I taught many, many, many years. And the only reason why I was qualified to teach because I had to learn to become a teacher. Okay? I wasn't a student. I was a finished teacher. I had my certificate. I learned how to teach, and I learned exactly what to teach. Okay? So I was a teacher. Does that mean you're not supposed to be teaching even though you're qualified? No, that's not what Paul ever said. Never, ever. Now, we don't have very many examples of women teaching during Paul's time, or at least Paul did not stress it out. We know that Priscilla taught Apollos, right? We know that. So if Paul was so strictly against teaching, women teaching, why did he not stop Priscilla from teaching Apollos? The same thing with Lydia. Okay, Lydia was another lady. I think she was from Philippi. I think so. But anyways, she was also a teacher. And I don't think she only taught men as well. She taught both men and women. There's a lot of them, but they're not just stressed out in Paul's letters. Hey, here's another woman preaching. He didn't have to do that because he understood that from the beginning that women as well as men are equal members in the body. He stressed that. He stressed it from the beginning. Every time, read about the church and you will know it. So we see that feminism has its place in the church. However, again, not the extreme feminism. That has no place in the church. Anybody who hates men, okay, who hates men, anybody, doesn't matter, has no place in the church. The place is not, the church is not a place for battle, okay? It's not a battlefield, okay? It's not a place where I have to work out my wrath or work out the wrongdoings that happened to me uh, uh, during one of during my lifetime. Let's assume somebody was abused by men, or even raped or whatever. The church is not a place to put that anger on another man. Okay, that's not where it is. The church could be a place of healing. Okay, healing these wounds and seeing that not all men, are abusers. Not all men are misogynists. Not all men are dominating women. Okay. Now, of course, if you belong to a traditional church, I can tell you right now that if you say you are a feminist, you are not welcome. Okay? Because in traditional churches where there's still male dominance, I don't think women are valued. Okay? They're still seen as a threat. So if you belong to a church like that, number one, I would leave. Okay? I would not stay there. I would leave because it is not the church that Christ intended or that even Paul was describing. All right? So no, I would not recommend for anybody to stay in a church like that. You're right. Feminism has no place in a church like that. Uh, it will be trampled over. It will be discarded. It will be put down. You will be persecuted. Um, so why force? Why force then the issue? Now, in a regular church where women are respected, yes, feminism has its place and it doesn't need to be stressed. It is an automatic thing. Okay, it is automatic. Women are automatically valued as much as men. Okay, there is a balance. There is a really great balance between feminism and masculinity or masculism, whatever you want to call it. Why does nobody talk about masculism? I don't know. Okay, why are we stressing? Well, because thousands of years, that's what we really had, right? We had, um, well, actually, we didn't, because if you put that in, that is giving men equal rights on the premise that the genders are equal. We haven't done that, actually. We have not done that. So, actually, that's why maybe that doesn't exist, that word. Because what do we have so far? Male dominance. Okay, all we had is male dominance. But please understand that in your traditional churches, where there's still a hierarchy, and where men are still dominating, feminism has no place there. Okay, none whatsoever. If you're searching for feminism in a church like that, you will not find it. And neither would I advise that you are forcing the issue in churches like that. I would not, because you're going against a grain. And here is this big thing, okay, the grain that you're going against. These churches that are male dominated, okay, or even have a hierarchy, it doesn't matter. They're going against the instruction of God, all right? They're going against the instruction of God. So what do you have? You have some pretty, if you have people that are saved, they are very carnally minded. They're not spiritually minded. And so you are going against carnally minded people, or yeah, believers maybe. There are believers maybe in some areas, but they're very blinded in other areas. And you're going against these people, and it does not do any good. Okay, you most likely will not accomplish anything. Again, you believe in feminism, and I read the definition. That does not mean I'm against men. I hate men, or I want women to be on top. No, that's not what feminism is. Okay, that's not what it is. Okay, so if you're for feminism, you need to search for a church that respects feminism. Okay, and here's also a warning. Here's the warning. Be very careful. Be very careful when you are amongst feminists that they're not on the other extreme. Okay, be careful that you are not in a camp where men are hated, where men are used as, okay, I'm going to say the word slaves. Okay, in other words, that this level is tilted in the other direction. So now women are in charge, and men are just, the little puppets that are following. I do not agree with that, but that could be something you need to be aware of. Okay, if you're a strong feminist, which is okay, being a feminist is great. Okay, but don't get to the point where you're going to that side, where now you want to be in charge to the detriment of men. Okay, Christian feminism is men and women having equal status. If you have anything against men, you hate men, okay, if they have done something to you that was wrong, I think you need to heal. That's, I think, most important. You need to heal. Okay? That is very, very important. You need to heal. Because you don't want that anger and that resentment to come out on every man. Okay? That should not be a reason why you're celebrating feminism. Because you were wrong. It's not a reason. You celebrate feminism because you value yourself. And the same goes, for men. If you believe in feminism, you value it because you value the opposite sex. Okay. Another warning goes to the men, those men that despise feminism or say, we don't need feminism, it's not necessary, or there is no room in the church for feminism, or just, devalue it. And I'm going to say to those people, what's wrong with it? What's wrong with it? Why can we not celebrate womanhood? Okay, because that's what it is. We celebrate womanhood. But at the same time, we also celebrate manhood. Okay, so even complementarians should agree with that we celebrate womanhood and manhood. Okay, not just, um, you know, ignore them. So I will finish up today. And I hope that kind of helped a little bit to not only understand what I believe, but also maybe to start thinking about what you believe about feminism, and if you think it has its place in the church. Okay, so again, think about not these militant feminism or Marxist feminism or all these different kinds of feminism, because there are very many different kinds of feminism. But think about Christian feminism. Okay, how are we living out Christian feminism? Okay, and we can look at Paul and we can look at Jesus, how he lived it out. Um, and I think we can also look at many, many great churches that live out feminism in right now, but it's not the hierarchy-oriented ones. So I'll talk to you next time, and keep studying because that's important, and ask the Holy Spirit to guide you.